So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our meeting, our wonderful meeting today. We will speak about the real estate market in the French Riviera. We will understand how to invest, how to know the right price, the right deal, and the right investment in the real estate market for the French Riviera area. And for this, we will have the right player, the right master together with us, with our guest, our special guest, Knight Frank, and we will speak with the best player of this wonderful team. Before to start our introduction, let's go to see our introduction, and we come back together for the art of real estate. Let's go. So the art of real estate, to better understand the right investment, the right property with the right master. And before to introduce you the right master, the big player, the Knight Frank players, I would like to introduce you André, that we host today the show with me, and support our special guest. André, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, Gianluca, and welcome to all our viewers today. It's a really exciting day because we've got some top professionals here based on the French Riviera.
Yes, sure. And we are not alone because, as always, my friend and our partner from his family office, Robert and Cie, is with us. Robert,
hi,
you are
everybody.
A right player today. Yeah?
That's kind of you to say, Gianluca and André, and it gives me an enormous pleasure to have such great people on the program today. We've got a lot to discuss. The market is extremely busy. It's bubbling over, and we're going to find out more. And I'd like to introduce, firstly, if I may, Mark Harvey, who runs the international residential team for Knight, to explain a little bit who he is. Mark, who the hell are you, Mark?
Hi, Mark.
Yes, that's a very good question, Robert. Thank you very much for such a kind introduction. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, firstly. As you say, I head up the international residential team at Knight Frank. For those who don't know, Knight Frank was founded in the late 1800s and is about to reach its 125th birthday. Obviously, the other thing I would tell you about Knight Frank, which not a lot of people know, is that it remains today a private partnership. And with over 500 offices worldwide and 20,000 staff, we are the largest privately owned property company in the world. So we're very proud of that. And my day today,
who are you, though, Mark? Because
well,
that's great. But who are you?
About that.
Here he is.
My day today, and I do have a day job, believe it or not, is really to look after our international residential network. We have a dedicated team in London that basically services some 70 odd offices across the Western Hemisphere, so across Europe, Caribbean, US. And I'm very privileged to be at the head of that team. And I work with very distinguished and professional individuals like some of your panel on there today, Rudi and Fred, who you'll be introducing later. But it's an incredible role that I play. I feel very privileged, as I said, very proud. Our role essentially out of London is basically to drive traffic towards the network and obviously serve as an extension, if you wish, to them.
So Mark, just asking you from a corporate point of view, why Knight Frank as opposed to anybody else?
Ooh, straight into the heart of the matter, Robert. Why Knight Frank? Well, we are simply the best. I think really the crux of Knight Frank, and I've touched on the partnership aspect, is that we remain completely independent within the property world. And I think that's a big thing. It's something not to underestimate in this day and age. We put our people, and I mean by that, I mean our staff and our customers at the heart of everything we do. I think that's what differentiates us in this day and age. In an age which is perhaps sort of full of perhaps the distortionists, those that are sort of focusing on technology rather than the customer relations.
So Mark, sorry to interrupt you, Mark, but obviously today we're concentrating on France. So if people want to know about other parts of the world, you're there and your team are there in London. But if we talk just 100%. About France, how many offices are you in France? How many people are you in France?
The Knight Frank network across France accounts for 21 offices at the moment. We are about to go into a formal relationship with an agency in Paris, which will take it to well over 30, I'm pleased to say. But we've been operating in France for nearly 30 years now, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to, share this moment with you.
Now, Mark, just sorry to interrupt because we've got a hell of a lot to do today. From your point of view, you're not that small. Am I right to assume that you're number one in the world as a firm of estate agents?
We are the largest independent private property company in the world. Yes, and so the network across France, we are the largest property company. Have the largest network across France, yes.
So if we could go into the heart of the matter, how many good negotiators are you in France? You said you've got a lot of offices, but how many negotiators are you?
The total number of consultants is approaching 70.
Okay, so if we could come back to you as we get into the heart of the matter, and maybe geographically, the nearest is Rudi. If we could have Rudi. Rudi, could you introduce yourself?
Welcome, Rudi.
Yes, Rudi, welcome.
Rudi.
Rudi, like me, you're not French, are you? Where are you originally from, Rudi?
Well, I'm originally from Belgium, from the Flemish part of the world, or part of Belgium. And we arrived here about 22 years ago in Provence, rather a little bit inland than from the Riviera, so we're about an hour drive from the coastal line. And I started about 20 years ago on my own. And now today we have 7 offices, about 40 people working for us, amongst them about 20-25 negotiators. Associated with Knight Frank about 10 years ago, because that was already a little bit of a reason after the first crisis which hit us in 2008, 2009 to go more international and having a real partnership on this with a global reach. And I must say, we see again today with the new crisis where we were talking about, there's a huge advantage of having the right partners just next to you for this. And
so Rudi, where are your offices, please?
Well, we have about 5 offices inland, which is in the Provence area itself, which is a little bit of the Tuscany of France. You have those hilltop villages, which are situated in the Luberon, in the Saint-Rémy area, in the Ile-sur-la-Sorgue, Mont Ventoux area. And afterwards, you drive down to the coastline, which is the Provence Riviera, which is Saint-Tropez, of course, as the biggest spot to know, Grimaud office at that time. So we're having inland and Riviera properties, about 600 for the moment.
Okay, sorry, Robert, so that's impressive.
Chris on the call from Cape Town to monitor Robert Anthony performance. And
just tell him it's useless. Say,
you might
Rudi,
something also. You, Robert,
so Frederik, if we could come to Frederik, we're a very international audience today because we're all talking about France. And I don't think there's one of us that is from France. Frederik, where are you from? And could you give us a little bit of your insight, please?
Welcome, Frederik.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, and good to see you all. Yes, I'm Norwegian, and I came to the south of France about 20 years ago as well. A bit the same story as Rudi in terms of time since I've been here, and got into real estate quite quickly. And we joined forces with Knight Frank about 10, 11 years ago now. It's been a great partnership, and one of the reasons we're here on these kind of panels today.
Okay, and your offices are where, Frederik?
So we have 5 offices in the Côte d'Azur, so between Cannes and Monaco, the Italian border. We have Saint-Jacques-Cap-Ferrat. We have Cannes agency and a Cannes kind of head office, and we have 2 backcountry offices, one in the village of Mougins and one in the village of Balbon.
Okay, so Mark, if we could come back to you, please. What influence do you feel Knight Frank has on the French market? And is there any particular deal size that you feel is more appropriate, or you deal with everything?
Listen, I think our influence is quite important, or not insignificant. We like to think that we bring a level of professionalism and know-how that really adds value to the network that we've associated with on the ground. Knight Frank has an incredible resource in research, and everything we do really is supported by the research and the countless hours that are put into this. During the sort of COVID crisis, to give you an example, our head of international research and the team are busy creating a daily update for our global markets that encompasses changes and stats and activity from right across the global picture. So I think we deliver a level of expertise, and we bring a certain Anglo-Saxon, I suppose, process to the network in France. I would say, just going back to what you were asking earlier, I would consider myself Francophile. I grew up in the south of France, and I'm actually bilingual. Strong affinity for the French market, and which is one of the reasons why I'm so sort of pleased to be, and proud to be part of this organization.
So Frederik, from your point of view, I presume your office also speaks several languages?
Yes, we have Russians, we have Swedes, we have Norwegians, French, Belgian, English, a whole variety. So we do speak all languages that are needed, I think, to deal with any kind of international buyer.
So you have a nervous breakdown every day. Can't remember which language you're speaking.
Well, I don't speak all of them. I speak only a few myself, but yes.
Okay.
Can be confusing.
To carry on, Rudi, from what Mark was saying on the COVID side, what have you actually seen? Have you seen people moving out of transactions? Have you seen more activity? What is actually your experience from this?
Well, it is a very exciting experience, which I'm always comparing with the first crisis in 2008, 2009. What we are seeing today, what we saw, first of all, when we went into lockdown, 15th of March, it completely stopped all activity for a couple of days. And it picked up pretty quickly after 2-3 weeks. And as you know, as all our clients and customers are living at least 1,000 kilometers from us, they are not locally situated. Our website is a very important barometer to see what's happening. And after 2 weeks, we saw an immense amount of people coming back on our website. Our audience today, by the way, have gone up with almost 150%, which is quite amazing. Yeah, well. In terms of audience, it's spectacular for the moment. Of course, it's virtual, but nevertheless, we have seen people calling us all the time. We just installed, for example, a chatbot for the first time, which I didn't really believe in, to be honest. But as my daughter is doing the marketing and she said we need a chatbot, it completely exploded over the time with people needing information. So we didn't lose just 1 or 2 deals which were running at that time, but 95% were still saved, where we have been able to finish them off during the period and just now finishing off the last ones. And to be honest, we're now dealing with the first ones post lockdown, I would say. So I am pretty amazed. I was hoping, of course, for this, but I'm pretty amazed myself by the impact and the huge impact it has for the moment.
And would you agree with this, Fred, or have you found a different reaction in the Alpes-Maritimes, Côte d'Azur?
I think we have a market here where we are very lucky. I mean, we've not been hit that hard. Of course, it's been tragic like everywhere, but I think people see the south of France as not only a great place to holiday, a great place to have a second home, but also a fairly safe place, both the investment side and health-wise. The healthcare services here are amazing. We're next to Monaco, where the healthcare is also great. And what we do see is a lot of French looking to buy property in France, in south of France, from Paris, for example. But also we're very lucky having Monaco next door, and Monaco has proven itself very lucrative to us in business-wise, because we've had several buyers coming out of there over the last 2 weeks as soon as the borders open again, where people realize that having a home to escape to, having space and a family asset that they can actually use during these kind of times, not only holiday, is quite valuable. So it's
yes, this is interesting. And from Mark, from your point of view, I was reading an article that said the UK is not depressed as everyone thought it was going to be. Would you agree that France seems to be just as active then in that same way, or is the press false press or true press? Because it'd be interesting to see your view, because you've got more of a global vision. Mark?
Indeed. I mean, we've been incredibly encouraged by the level of activity. We've been incredibly encouraged by the level of activity that we've witnessed across our network throughout the lockdown period and subsequently. We call it pent-up demand, Robert, and the level of inquiries that we've seen in the UK and across the rest of the network are incredibly encouraging. I think we're probably going to see something of a first wave of activity as buyers seek to position themselves in the wake of this tragedy. But obviously, the UK will resonate always with an international clientele, London in particular. I think, you know, if I'm going to sort of fly the UK flag for a little bit, sterling is incredibly weak at the moment, which makes our real estate very attractive and very affordable for a global community. But just to come back to France, I would say, and I couldn't hear what Rudi said sadly, I would say that there's nowhere in the world that's quite like the Riviera, which encompasses the lifestyle elements, but actually a genuine business platform with all of the airlift that follows. So it really is unique and still very high on, you know, the people's.
But with your background, Rudi, people just get in the car and drive for 12 hours with or without an aeroplane, no? So that doesn't really affect anybody?
Indeed, Robert. As we saw again on what's happening for the moment, we see a huge interest, of course, of the French clients. Before we had about 60% foreign buyers and 40% French. It completely inversed. It is now 60% French and 40% foreign buyers. And of these foreign buyers, just to give you an example, Swiss and Germans, who are just at a one-day driving distance from us, exploded at about 230% in terms of audience, and about 60% in more leads coming in from them for the last 2 months. So it clearly shows that the minute we are quite good, accessible, people are coming down because they are in that need of another lifestyle, as Mark already pointed out, of another environment than a city environment, and having a sort of a compensation of what happened for the last days. Of course, there's also a financial aspect, but perhaps we talk about that later on.
Again, of course, I imagine, yes, go on.
Robert, I would like to ask you something. You have an important family office. Give also to us your point of view. We got clients that ask you to invest in real estate. Which is your point of view, also linked to your customer with your family office?
My point of view is that people want to do business and people want to come out of towns. So people who have got flats are now going to look differently to see what they can afford in terms of secondary homes, to have weekend homes and a quality of life, which is why I think you're seeing the Parisian situation that Rudi mentioned. We as a family office are seeing an activity, And one of the issues is finance, and historically and currently, because there were margin calls on historical property. But in addition, you've got to have the ability to have a mortgage on a new property. And what I saw, Mark, in the UK was, I think you just opened up, but nobody could do a valuation. And the UK financing market had become much more stringent on the residency of the investor. So, which to a certain extent has happened in the south of France. So it'd be interesting to see us as a family office. We obviously work quite closely where we can with people like Knight Frank, because it's great to work in teams. And I think the not just buying a property, it's also being able to complete on the property you're buying. And I think this is just as important. And it would be interesting to see the reaction of the Three Musketeers. I think I'll call you the Three Musketeers. As to what your thoughts are on that. Because great to sell a property, but if you can't financing it, you can't sign the final act. What is your experience, the three of you? Any one of you?
Well, thank you, Robert. Yes, I mean, we have done business before, and partners like yourselves are tremendously important. I mean, we mustn't forget that we're bringing often people from totally different parts of the world into a brand new market. They're never bought in France. They've never done a transaction here. They don't speak the language. They don't know what banks to speak to, and so forth. You know, we hold their hand as long as we can and as far as we can, and then we need partners like yourself and banks to come in and structure either ownership or finance. So to us, it's an essential part of any transaction.
Okay.
We have a question.
Yes, sure.
How much influence do you feel Knight Frank's annual wealth report has on people selecting property?
I think that's one for you, Mark. No?
There we go.
Mark?
I perhaps received a call, but he will be back. We'll be back.
Well, Rudi, do you want to answer it if you can?
Well, I think it's a very huge important. It's a very important magazine. Knight Frank sets out every year about the wealth report, which is following up wealth all over the world, and it's certainly a very important report where we show that wealth has concentrating points in Europe, which is London, Asia, and New York. And a lot of people, certainly the ultra high net worth individuals, in which we are in contact with. About 70% of all these people, by the way, has a relationship with Knight Frank, which is very important that they have the right information, which they get through that report, and they are really keen on every edition every year to make a selection. Which market should we be going in terms of real estate? Should we go into a city market? Which continent is better? What's the return on investment in every country? So it's certainly for the ultra high net worth individuals a very important report. In terms of the core or prime market, it's less important, I would say. We're much more there in that, as we said already, lifestyle, second home, much more philosophical reasons or emotional regions which are important, where the wealth report doesn't really respond. Nevertheless, the latest edition really spoke about this for the first time in many years, where also lifestyle or nature in general, or the ecological footprint of having a property becomes a very important, let's say, criteria in the choice of a property.
Okay, and
yes,
you got
Rudi. Sorry, Robert.
Oh, André.
Yeah, Rudi, you said before about research and how that was valuable to the way that you conduct business now, which is obviously taking in that holistic approach that Knight Frank have been working on for many years. You know, you have your wealth report, you've got now your app where you can now help people. I think that this COVID-19 has really shook people up to say, you know, what were my reasons for investing? The Knight Frank report solidifies the commentary that you have put into there, and then making those decisions, I guess, in terms of, am I relocating to a particular area for lifestyle, for investment, or for security in the case of, for instance, Monaco, and the way that they've handled this crisis. So it's offering, obviously, I think Knight Frank's advantage there is really having those multiple areas to support the client.
Well, what I want to ask you guys, because we've been talking about COVID, we've been talking about markets. our viewers want to know: are there bargains to buy? Rudi and Fred. I mean, the natural person thinks, God, things stopped. Forgive me, anybody who doesn't like that. Things have stopped for 2 months. Can I go out there and get myself a deal? Fred, are there deals out there, or is that just high in the sky?
Yeah, I think for sure there are deals out there. I mean, you can't hide the fact that this is probably going to be a buyer's market for a little while. We get the question every day from our clients, both our vendors and or buyers. You know, vendors doesn't look for a deal, obviously. They wonder, is this a good time to sell? And I don't think we've seen the effect of the financial potential, crisis that's coming yet, and it might take 3-6 months. So at the moment, it's a very stable market. The deals that we have done in the last week has been within the norm of discount, if you like, 10-15% maybe of the asking price in some cases, not more than that. And we must remember that the French market is structured differently than a lot of the Northern European markets or other world markets, where here we are, a property is priced at the maximum an owner think it can achieve in the market. And from there, they take offer as close as possible to the asking price. So if you compare to other markets where our buyers' home markets might be very different, where they have an asking price and it might actually be above the asking price. So a discount is hard to read in France, but there will certainly be certain people looking to sell quicker than before.
But we have a question. How are prices evolving on the French Riviera?
Well, that was exactly the same point I was going to bring up anyway, which I want to ask Rudi. I mean, I just read an article recently that London prices went up 15% in Kensington, that Parisian prices have not reduced, if they have, maybe only 1 or 2%. How's it affected you in the Var? Do you, or the Luberon, wherever?
Or the Luberon.
Do you agree with what in Saint-Tropez? Is it the same situation?
I would say that it's a little bit of the same situation as Fred is seeing in between Cannes and Monaco. But we always have to bear in mind, first of all, which market are we talking about? If we go to the, let's say, prime markets, properties up to, let's say, 3 to 5 million euros, we don't see a lot of, there is some expectation of the buyers. But as Fred also pointed out, for us, we have, for the moment, 2.5 buyers for one property above 1 million. So we are in a strong buyer's market still for the moment. We also see that there's a lack of quality, which was already going on for the last 2 years. So lack of quality, meaning the right property on the right place at the right price, is not so easy to find even today. What I'm saying is that, well, there is certainly an expectation, but for the moment, the vendors or the owners are saying to us, why should we giving a discount if we see that through all this last 2 months period, the best thing to have was a nice roof above your head? And should we be really just selling it and putting it just like this on the market? And I'm going to say now something which perhaps Fred won't accept, but I think price might even go up for a certain part of the world.
That's great. That's just what I like. Fred, can you reply to that one, please?
I can, and I was, I agree actually. I'm Norwegian. I'm looking also closely on the Norwegian market. Cottages by the sea outside Oslo has gone up 9.2% so far. And we will see, I agree with you, Rudi, we will see that here as well, because one, owners realize the value of their asset in their property, and they found a new way of using it as well, I think. So they are reluctant to sell, and we got new buyers realizing the same thing but don't have the property yet. So that might drive prices up, at least on the short term. And then obviously, low interest rate continues. Exchange rate can be good or bad depending if you come from a buyer's or a seller's perspective. A lot of our clients are also saying that they haven't invested enough into real estate over the last few years and wanting to put a little bit more aside into real estate, which is on the French Riviera traditionally a safe long-term investment. 5 years plus, it will take a lot to knock the price down massively. But For the moment, I agree with you, Rudi. In the future, by the end of the year, I don't know what's going to happen, of course. But
so let's talk to you guys then to hedge our bets. Yeah. We're buying a property. We're paying what we consider is the right price. We don't know whether it's the right price tomorrow or whether we're going to make money by buying it well. Would you consider, because I know both of you are involved in the rental market, do you think the rental market's going to come back? Are you seeing it coming back? Because we know maybe in June things can start opening up again. And would you consider that if I'm an investor and I want to buy a second home, I can hedge my risk on the rental market? Rudi, could you give me your point of view? Then we'll go to Fred.
Yep. Okay. Well, I don't know whether there was time. I had a little example of that price and what's happening in offering, but perhaps a little bit later on. But to come back to your question, Robert, indeed, we have seen ourselves, and you can't believe it, in the month of April, like 15 times more. Normally, we're about 60 to 70, let's say, contracts or leads coming in a couple of weeks. We had about 1,000 leads coming in the month of April. So there was a huge amount of people. It was 95% French. It was mainly for the month of August. So a lot of people were just trying to escape from their apartment, I presume, and finding a way to pass summer or the coming weeks. Now, I think this will not just stop. I think really it will continue, that people will be looking, and for the rental market will certainly be important, because a lot of people, unfortunately enough, don't have, let's say, the financial possibilities to buy, but they want to have the same lifestyle anyway for a certain period in their life, and perhaps then move on in a couple of years later. And you have also, we had a little, let's say, market survey done ourselves lately, of all the people who we contacted and interviewed, passing on our website, 85% were in a mood to buy or in a phase of buying a property. 15% were still on a rental. So there is still quite some movement on that rental market, which will be in the future for me more and more important anyway. So just going back, you had a point you wanted to make, Rudi, that you said you'd leave for later. What was that point, please? Well, a bit of example to give you the state of mind of the market. We lost a deal in Saint-Tropez in a property which is, let's say, in the prime market at which was on the market for 1,950. We had a buyer from it who hadn't seen the property, who made an offer at 1,750,000, and we lost, and he wanted to go up to 1,850,000, and we lost the deal by another agent with a client who even didn't visit the property, because he was just giving the asking price for the property, just to show you the state of mind at that moment. And I think, as Fred said himself, on a short delay, we think that price will be rather stable, perhaps going up. Afterwards, in 3 to 6 months, it will be very hard. It's impossible to say, honestly, what's going to happen, because we don't know the economical, financial impact of everything what's happening to us. And as we have now a sort of a vague of very highly motivated buyers, which we're trying to sell something, we are then waiting from these vague of paralyzed buyers who are following us, who are still interested, but haven't put their feet on the market yet. Okay, so Fred, we see that Mark's come back with us. We'll come to this in a minute. Yeah. Fred, could you give us your view on the rental market and the gazumping? Seeing gazumping is exactly the opposite, which we haven't seen for years. So that's very encouraging. So give us a little bit your feedback on that, please, Fred.
Yes, Rudi, that story is indeed encouraging, even though you didn't end up doing the deal. I think it shows that the market is like that and quite reactive. For rentals, we've seen a big increase in inquiries and in rentals during the confinement. Now in France, they did stop any holiday rental for a certain period during the confinement. But leading up to that point, we did some fantastic rental deals. People coming from Monaco, people coming from areas around the French Riviera who were probably in rentals already, and also coming down from Paris and all the countries, coming in just before the lockdown, and decided to confine themselves basically on a property here on the French Riviera. And we spoke to someone who had done that yesterday afternoon, and they said they were from London and they couldn't be happier. So, and they were definitely going to buy something. So I think the experience from the rental is important for the buyers to realize the value. But also, as you said, Rudi, not everyone can afford to buy property here, even though you can get something very nice, sub 1 million.
So let's hear from Mark. Mark, I know we did a file. Can you hear me, Mark? Mark? No, I don't think he can hear me. I think he's watching, but he can't hear. Okay, so let's keep going then. What we're being asked is, sorry, go on. Go on, Gianluca. Gianluca, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, we have a question from a friend. Are there some areas better to buy than others? Mark, can you hear us? Mark?
Apparently, there's a problem with his line. Fred, would you like to explain on the Côte d'Azur where you feel there's better areas than others?
Oh, it's so personal, Robert. It's hard to say. I mean, I think Rudi would say the same thing. It depends what you're after. Are you after nightlife and being on the beach and being seen and see people? You go to the hotspots on the Cap Ferrat, Cap d'Antibes, Cannes and Monaco. If you are looking for a retreat to relax, you go backcountry and you find yourself a nice big property with a pool and a tennis court, a nice barbecue, and you basically don't have to move. Well, you might go to the local village for the market or for dinner occasionally, but it's so personal.
Let's be a little bit more specific. I have a limited budget. I don't want to land up with something that I can't sell afterwards. Are there areas that are more liquid than other areas that you would consider, Frederik?
Well, I think if you stay within half an hour drive of Nice airport, you'll be fairly safe no matter where you go. But I think there are hotspots. Obviously, there's more popular villages, for example, in the backcountry like Valbonne, Saint-Paul-de-Vence, which are known to a lot of people, and Mougins. And then on the coast, you have the Cannes, which is obviously very well known, and Nice. So if you stay in, the most known areas, you will also find yourself in an asset that remains perhaps slightly more liquid than the other areas.
And Rudi,
what about the rental market, Frederik, around the Monaco area? What about the long-term rental market surrounding the Monaco area?
We don't do much long-term. We focus on the holiday and short-term rentals. But what we do see is a lot of people are international. They come maybe rent something from just after school breaks to the end, or indeed during the school year to put the children in international school in Monaco, Nice or Mougins, and then they rent from September to June, which is still considered short-term. So, but around Monaco, yes, escaping the smaller apartments in Monaco and having a nice home to go to with space and a pool and a garden for the children is very important.
Mark, can you hear us now or not?
I can. I'm really sorry. I'm not quite sure what it is.
Don't worry.
I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology at the best of times, but when the elements are against me.
You're not on your own. Mark, could you explain to us the ultra high net worth market that you may bring to France and how you're seeing that market at the moment? The people that really want very expensive properties.
Well, as you can imagine, this is a purely discretionary market, and it's a very specialist one. We have a team of super prime experts in London, two of which work with me directly in international, but they tend to, by virtue of the fact that those clients are pretty mobile, they tend to sort of follow them around the world. So it's not uncommon for members of my team or indeed the private office to be looking 1 week in Singapore, the next for some commercial assets in London, and the next in LA, California. So it's an incredibly exciting world that they operate in. And of course, it's all about trust and credibility at that point.
But let's focus on France, Mark. We're focusing on France. What's happening on France?
We've had what is clear is that the last few years have got better and better, and as people have become more confident about the global economy, we've seen a number of very high-profile sales occur, both in the south of France and Paris, and actually the super prime market in the Alps is also starting to sort of unlock more recently. As I said, the big question about super prime is liquidity, always has been. There's no real need to sell, but when you do need to sell, obviously, that's where the challenge occurs. And you need a team like our own who are really sort of well versed at this. They're very close to our clients. We had some extraordinary results last year and the year before, actually, in France. Not just in Paris, but right across the Hexagon.
But could you be more specific, Mark? Because this is all generality. What our viewers want to see is what you're talking about, not general issues, but pragmatism. So if you have an ultra high net worth client, would they be in Cap d'Antibes, Paris, or would they be in Cannes? What type of budgets are we talking about? Would you be going also working with Rudi and Frederik, or your offices in Courchevel or Paris on this?
Well, of course. Well, the demand has typically been for super prime is obviously going to be in those sort of ultra prime locations. So Cap Ferrat is an obvious one. The peninsula in Saint-Tropez is another. There are certain little enclaves inland as well in Fred's area where we've seen and have got some exceptional stock. As you can imagine, this is a very private world and one we can't really discuss too openly, but I can tell you that, it is still very active. Several sales in Paris specifically, over 40 million, 50 million constitutes a super prime market in France.
Would you agree with that?
Frederik, as you know, is a big...
Would you agree, Frederik, with that? Would you agree with those levels? As what would be your definition of normal, super, etc.? How would you define that? Like the private banker in property, do you have a level where you say, this is my staff, this is Frederik?
Well, it comes down to personal relationship a lot with the clients and deciding where the client will end up with what broker. But the core market for us, I think, is similar to Rudi's. It's 1 to 3 million. The prime market is 3 million to say 10, and the super prime is 10 and above. And then the ultra prime, if you like, is maybe 30 million. 40 million and above there. And, like Mark said, we did do some fantastic deals in France last year. We were lucky enough to be able to set a new record for a price achieved per square meter for a sale we did in Cannes, but a record for France. So we do have the capacity of that.
What was that figure?
The figure per square meter for the unit was just around 70,000 euros per square meter.
Okay, that's interesting for our viewers to understand. But if you said you got 70,000 square meters, the square meter in Cannes, can I buy cheaper, or is it outside of my price range? Because there I'll end up with a toilet.
Yes, we all would end up with a toilet at that price range. I think you would find something in Cannes starting around 6,000 euros a square meter for kind of the lower priced units, 6,000 to 10,000, and then as you go to the more prime sectors of Cannes, you have to spend 10,000, 15,000 per square meter and higher up. Sky's the limit in any luxury market, I would say, and the French Riviera is no exception. But not having millions doesn't mean you can't enjoy that lifestyle down here. That's clear. You can.
So I don't have a sleepless night. I don't have. Rudi, would you say that you both said you're in the same markets of 1 to 3 million, or Frederik said this? But would I get more for my money where you are, or less, or what would I actually get for my money?
Of course, you get much more for your money in my area, Robert. So I invite you to discover if you wish. But no, it's sure that a little bit inland countryside Provence, which is of course a little bit of a lot of lifestyle, much as Fred pointed out, or a little bit more remote. It's more vivons cachés, vivons heureux. We're a little bit of hideaway, and you have sometimes splendid properties. But here, the core market or the prime market we have is you get already something pretty nice below 1 million euros already, 700,000-800,000 euros. You can find something older house, nicely redone, depending where you are. Because the more north you go inland, the cheaper it gets a little bit. But when you go down,
hold on a minute, Rudi. You're saying go inland, But as far as I understood, you're in Saint-Tropez on the Pampelon. You can't be any nearer to the sea than that, surely. And would that be the same as Frederik, or are you basically saying not? I mean, can I get a deal in Saint-Tropez?
To be honest, no. There is a lack again of quality. Saint-Tropez is comparable to the Cannes area and Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat. It's a very limited, very, let's say, confidential market. Not everything is on the market, by the way, but you are easy in a price range between 20 to 30,000 euros a square meter, depending on what you're looking for and where you're looking for. But that's the Saint-Tropez Peninsula mainly. Once you go out of the peninsula and you go a little bit higher up to Grimaud, La Garde-Franais, and those villages over there, it becomes much more of a price between 5 to 10,000 euros in average per square meter, depending of an old house which is renovated or a more modern contemporary one, or something which is not in need of a renovation at that time.
So Mark, would you, if I came to your office in London and I said I've got 15 million to spend, send me somewhere, would you send me to Grimaud? Or would you send me to Cap Ferrat, or would you send me to Cap d'Antibes? Where would you send me? And I say I don't know where I want to go.
I think we would spend a little bit of time talking about your sort of experience and what your family, you and your family, wants to get out of this purchase. The kind of long term during which you want to hold it, and really your aspirations. Is this a primary home, a secondary home? Where you base tax-wise, what do you do in life? I think all of these things will help determine really where we would sort of point you ultimately. It's very rare to obviously have someone coming in with that kind of open budget without an idea of where they want to be.
And is this the wife you're dealing with, or the husband, or the couple?
It can be either or, and it's often at these levels. It's often the family office, a representative of the family, who will be very discreetly, gently making inquiries to see which agent they're most comfortable with. Which agent has got the sort of the greatest knowledge, which agent has got the is most discreet, etc., etc. It's a people business, Robert, as I said at the outset. And if the match is right, you're more likely to transact and be able to advise people not just on one purchase and one disposal, but multiple. And as I said, across the board, both resi and commercial.
Understand? Yes, we understand this as a family office because we often are a sub-family office for other international family offices, because the other international family offices like to have a correspondent. So that tends to work quite well for us, because then we're dealing with people where we can communicate and understand each other because we're on the same wavelength. So I understand that totally. Do you get that type of client, Rudi, where you are? Obviously in Saint-Tropez, I can imagine, but in the Luberon, when you leave the Var, are there things like that in the Luberon?
How you mean, Robert? People looking for?
Well, large properties of a high value.
Oh yes,
in the middle of nowhere.
Yes, of course. It's you get much more. You get much more for your money over here in terms of surface, anyway. But the Provence is very known for its old Provençal farmhouses, which have been renovated to more modern standards, with exquisite gardens and pool areas. So we have quite a lot, and there is more and more of a demand of these sort of family homes, family domains. At least we're talking about 5 to 7 bedrooms en suite, and certainly a very good pool area and terrace area. And what's very important over here is, like it is at the coast, is the view on the sea. We have the view on the countryside or on the Luberon, which is very important and makes an extra value to the property at a time.
So if I wanted an olive grove or a wine to make my own wine, would I come to you?
Yes, surely, because we recently launched a new part of our business in terms of winery estates, and I just went today to a very beautiful one, which is rather an up 20 million price, with 100 hectares of vines and woods, a beautiful Italian-inspired castle with also three other houses on the land. So we see that there are some couple of let's say nice properties which will come on the market soon with us. We have certainly more and more interest about this because again, it's a sort of a product which is a little bit exceptional, not for everyone, but there is certainly more and more demand for these kind of winery estates or combination of wines with olive groves at that time.
Okay, and Frederik, are you seeing any particular wave of nationalities or countries at the moment, or is it a bit of everything?
Well, it's mostly French and any nationality really. At Monaco, it's a melting pot of nationalities, and we see there's Italians, there's Scandinavians, there's Americans, the Russians, the Monegasque themselves as well coming out of there. To echo what Rudi just said, we are seeing a new trend in buying pattern and what people are searching for, and indeed, the more land use was almost a little bit out of fashion the last few years. A property that was more practical, still having a garden, still having a pool, but not too much because maintenance, if you live abroad, this is a secondary home. But now the trend is turned completely. Now they're coming to us saying we want minimum 3 hectares, minimum 10 hectares. They want space, they want privacy. Land is something obviously they don't make anymore, and the more you can have of it, the more value you retain. And yeah.
So, Mark, you said something quite interesting that your clients follow you all over the world. We're on an art program. Do your clients, when they actually buy a property, do they normally ask help from Knight Frank to introduce them to interior designers, to architects, and maybe also art galleries, like or how does that actually work from your experience?
Occasionally, this does happen. I think all I would say is that, generally speaking, at this level, these guys are incredibly well surrounded, are incredibly sophisticated, worldly, and they probably don't need our assistance in that regard. We're always very happy and willing to point them in the right direction, be it towards a yacht broker or an art gallery, or indeed other providers. Frederik actually has a very good connection with some of the supercar dealers in the south of France, and he loves to sort of pull those out on occasions. But
I think we all do, no? We all enjoy a nice car, I think.
What they want from us first and foremost, though, is the reassurance and sort of to be able to sort of proceed in a way that is unencumbered, safe, discreet, and sensible. I think this is really what we provide more than anything else.
I invite you in our showroom, in our new gallery.
Sorry, I missed that, Robert.
What Gianluca said is he invites you to the Fairmont, to his new gallery, to show his art.
Gallery and our showroom. Yeah,
thank you very much.
Huge interior design company. So
you come to the Vernissage.
And also, Frederik, and team, you're also welcome to come and have a look.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. I very much look forward to that, and also being released, by the way, from lockdown, which would be great.
I think we're all looking forward to that. So I'm a client that wants to sell a property. I'm a little bit confused. Do I go to Frederik? Do I go to Rudi? Or do I go to you? How do I decide who I'm going to speak to? Because all of you are lovely people, and I'm totally confused now.
Listen, Robert, at the end of the day, we are one. This is what makes our strength. We're not in competition with each other. We just simply add value to everything we do. So it's not uncommon for a vendor to come to us in London because there's a relationship one way or another. There's a certain level of perhaps confidence that is instilled, or a certain reassurance that we can provide that perhaps the truth on the ground may not be able to do. It's all about client care, and we'll do our utmost to satisfy that. The guys there, Rudi and Fred, are very well versed in this, and whenever we bring a buyer to them, sorry, a vendor to them, we will discuss it and determine, who is best placed to handle it. Typically, the higher level instructions will be managed out of London, needless to say, but that isn't necessarily the case across the board. But I would just reaffirm we are one. The level of service you get from me or us in London, my team in London, is equal to that you receive from Rudi and Fred on ground.
So would you call yourselves the Flying Doctors from London? Mark? I think we've lost Mark.
No, not necessarily. Well, I think you can call me whatever you like, Robert. I think from our perspective, what our customers expect from us and what the teams on the ground expect from us is engagement and I think value added, and we can bring a sort of a slightly different approach and a slightly different perspective to the guys on the ground. They're very busy, they're running around, they're frontline. Agency is a very tough and exhausting role, and sometimes the ability to be able to call me and seek reassurance among my team can really deliver and make the difference between a sale and not a sale. And sometimes vendors will sell for less money because they feel comfortable with the service and the advice we've given them. And that's something which a lot of agents don't understand. And I think that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So Frederik, I want to ask a question. I'm a client. I've come to you. You've told me and Rudi that the market is bubbling and you've not sold my property in a year. Is it my fault, or is it just the market, or what should I do, and who should I speak to? I'm with one of your negotiators. How should I handle this?
Well, sometimes it's worth having a meeting with the negotiator and some other team members from one of my offices, so that we can talk openly about what strategy to apply to maybe attract more buyers. I mean, it's a living thing, this market, and nobody controls it. So we really have to try to adapt and follow what trends are going on. If the price needs to go down, sadly the price rarely go up in terms of your asking price. But I think it's about listening to the market and being open to take our advice. And it takes time to sell a secondary home, especially if you're looking 1 million euros and up. It doesn't normally sell in 9 months. I mean, we advise our vendors often to say it's a depends on the area, 6 to 18 months process. So take your time, enjoy it while you can, because the day someone comes and finds that your property is the right one for them, they want it right away. So then you have to move. And we've had the cases where people have pulled away and said, no, I love my place too much, I don't want to sell it after all. Because the process is going too fast. But
could you answer that one, for Rudi, as well? Could you reply to that one, please?
Yes, of course. Well, I can only confirm what Fred is already saying. But anyway, a very important thing to understand of this market, which is primarily a second home market anyway, it's a very slow market. It has always been a very slow market. Why? First of all, the first phrase when I come into a property, the vendor or the owner is saying, I'm not in a rush, Rudi. And when we meet buyers, they're always saying, I'm not in a rush, Rudi. So the only one who is in a rush is Rudi himself, because he would like to pay all the employees. So that makes it a little bit complicated to bring those two together. But what's not being in a rush? Of course, they have a certain expense. So what I'm trying to say is we try to prepare the owner to say, don't panic if it's not sold in a year's time, because it's such of a slow market where we don't only master the full situation of it.
Okay, so we're running out of time. Mark, a last word for 10 seconds, if you've got anything to say.
I would probably simply say, go to an agent that you trust, is going to give you good advice, is going to be clear, communicative, available, and most of all honest, and enjoy it. It does take time, but if you listen to best advice, generally we can sell within a fairly swift period of time.
Okay. Any last word, Frederik, before we finish?
I think don't stop dreaming. If you can't afford it now to buy, rent it. And if you can't afford either of those, do like most of us have done. It's work hard and have focus, and you'll end up on the Riviera soon.
Rudi?
I hope a lot of owners are watching us, because we are in need of the right properties for the moment, and we bring you the right buyer, and only by our local expertise and the connection, the international connection with Knight Frank, is the perfect solution for that.
So can I thank all the viewers for watching, and to say it's been a great pleasure. Thank you all for coming to the program. I hope you found it stimulating and interesting, and I hope I haven't given you too hard a time. And hopefully we can do this another time. And Mark, sorry for the technology, but it happens. Thanks. And I think Gaudio will finish, Gianluca will finish things off.
It was a big pleasure. I suggest to you a weekly show where you present the best properties on TV, on our television station. Tomorrow we will repeat our show in the Lux and Art and Lux channel in the Principality of Monaco, and in our Art and Luxury channel in Italy, Sky. So we will go live again tomorrow. And don't forget to miss our Saturday show. Tomorrow we will have André, a big show together again.
Yeah, great show, and thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was an insightful explanation today, and the viewers enjoyed it. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank all of you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you out of lockdown.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Robert. Look forward to it. Thank you.